Carlos Watson had it all: a Harvard education, a Stanford law degree, a job at Goldman Sachs, and a career as a TV anchor on CNN and MSNBC. Smart, smooth, presidential. In 2013, he launched something new, a digital media startup called OZ Media. His goal? To rethink news.
Carlos Watson, making an impact of his own, the co-founder and editor of Aussie.com.
To tell stories other platforms ignored, to blend culture, politics, tech, and inspiration. Carlos promised OZ would be the next big thing, bigger than BuzzFeed, smarter than Vice, cooler than Vox, and coming from a guy like him, people believed it. Over the next few years, OZ raised over $70 million. The investors, big names, venture capitalists, former Disney executives. OZ reported tens of millions of readers, hundreds of millions of video views, a hit YouTube channel, a flashy festival called OZ Fest. Everything looked perfect. But then, a single phone call changed everything. A fake voice, a lie to one of the world's biggest banks, and suddenly, everything unraveled. So if that voice wasn't real, what else was fake? And could Carlos Watson, this golden boy of media, actually be a fraud?
Watson, the CEO and co-founder of Aussie Media, has been found guilty on all 3 counts in his fraud trial.
Federal prosecutors in New York have arrested Aussie Media CEO Carlos Watson on fraud charges.
Friday, President Trump commuted the criminal fraud sentence of Aussie Media founder Carlos Watson.
Carlos Watson wasn't just another tech founder. He was built for TV. He had the resume, charm, polish. Harvard, Stanford, Goldman Sachs, CNN, MSNBC. He interviewed presidents, sat across from CEOs, spoke with confidence and power. People saw him as different. A founder with Polish, vision, and media power. He was the one everyone thought could break through the noise. So when Carlos started OZ Media in 2013, people were excited. The mission sounded bold, a new kind of news, focused on the future, global, diverse, inspirational. He promised big things, and he knew how to sell it. Carlos said OZ was a media brand built for the next generation, and he sold it like a lifestyle. Soon, OZ raised money from top investors. By 2021, the company had raised over $70 million. From billionaire VC firms, global media companies, and private equity. Carlos said OZ's audience was exploding.
Several months later, to Goldman's enormous credit, they stepped forward and began a new advertising partnership with us. And so I think part of that was a recognition that, as tragic and not okay as that was, it's the name of our larger media company, named after a great poem 200 years ago. But fun fact, our friend Ozzy and Sharon sued us briefly.
He claimed they had over 20 million email subscribers, that their YouTube shows had millions of views, that OZ Fest attracted thousands to Central Park.
Here at Aussie Fest, and we are doing an interactive mural of hope and love and positivity.
And he wasn't just pitching the dream. He was everywhere. On podcasts, on panels, on prime time. From the outside, OZ looked like a rocket ship. But inside the company, some employees were confused. The traffic numbers didn't match what they saw. Campaigns weren't adding up. Deals were announced publicly. But behind closed doors, no one saw the proof. OZ looked perfect. Almost too perfect. And then came the call. The one that changed everything.
A little predictable in a lot of cases, meaning that whatever the handful of big stories were around the world would be the same story you'd see in most publications.
There's no downside for you. Like, the group that you belong to is better situated than any group in the world to take chances.
But it's not just that phone call. I mean, there were reports that Ozzy had been inflating numbers for years, digital traffic numbers, that weren't entirely true.
In early 2021, Goldman Sachs got interested. They were thinking about investing $40 million. Carlos set up a meeting. He said YouTube's leadership would join the call to explain OZ's success on the platform. The meeting started normally. Carlos introduced a YouTube executive named Alex Piper. He spoke about OZ's video performance. He said OZ was a top partner. He made big promises about future growth, but something felt off. The voice on the call sounded strange, like it was digitally altered. Goldman's team got suspicious. After the call, they contacted YouTube to confirm the meeting. That's when the truth hit. YouTube had no idea what they were talking about. No one named Alex Piper had joined that call. The voice was fake. Turns out, it was Samir Rao, Ozi's COO. He used voice-changing software to impersonate a real YouTube executive. He pretended to back up Carlos's claims in front of one of the world's biggest banks. Goldman pulled out immediately. The story leaked, and within days, everything came crashing down. Was this just one fake call? If they faked this, what else did they fake?
Ozzy was born with this this hunger to introduce you to rising stars, new trends, the best things to read, watch, and eat.
He said that they're investors. He didn't disclose how they became investors. To me, that was so indicative.
Look, we're back. It's not going to be easy, but I hope if people now...
Who's backing you?
If people now know the name Ozzy, O-Z-Y, I hope they'll sign up for our newsletter.
After the phone call scandal, reporters started digging. In October 2021, the New York Times dropped a bombshell article. It exposed not just the fake call, but years of fraud and deception. Employees came forward. They said the company inflated video views, faked contracts, made up revenue, claimed to have deals with advertisers and companies that didn't exist. Former employees said Carlos pushed them to lie. Reports were padded. Metrics were made up. Pressure came from the top. Ozy claimed it had 20 million email subscribers. But even insiders didn't know who those people were. It wasn't just video traffic. Sponsorships, partnerships, audience size, all of it was overblown or entirely made up. Worse, the company took out loans based on these lies. They convinced banks and investors to give money based on made-up data. Even the famous Ozy Fest, it looked good in photos. But the audience was smaller than claimed. Speakers dropped out. Sponsors never got paid. Still, Carlos denied everything. He went on cable news. He did interviews.
Co-founder had a phone call with Goldman Sachs as you were trying to raise money and effectively took them off of a Zoom and apparently started to impersonate with a fake email address as well, somebody from YouTube. What happened?
He said Ozy was the victim of a smear campaign.
Admitted that between 2018 and 2021, he made misleading statements to investors and inflated the company's financial performance while also committing identity theft.
So lots of miscommunication in that, but I want to clarify that one because I think that was definitely one where we lost a lot of trust.
But the pressure was too much. His investors backed out. Ozy's board members resigned. The company shut down, then strangely reopened just a few weeks later. Carlos said they were rebuilding, but the DOJ and SEC were already watching. And once the truth came out, would anyone still believe in Ozy?
But what it now appears like is actually it wasn't a YouTube original either. And in fact, that was somewhat of what the discussion or the issue was with Goldman Sachs.
There's a charge of securities fraud found guilty, wire fraud found guilty, and aggravated identity theft also guilty.
This was not an investor update call. This was a call where they were trying to get new investors.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that's going to be critical to this story because on the other end of the call, the people they're trying to get money from was Goldman Sachs.
In February 2023, federal prosecutors finally made their move. Carlos Watson was arrested in New York. The charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, misleading investors, and the details were shocking. Carlos and his team had lied in pitch decks, emails, and meetings. They created fake contracts. They forged signatures. They pretended to have multi-million-dollar deals with Amazon, YouTube, and other media companies. They even submitted false financial records to banks to get millions in loans they never qualified for. The fake YouTube call? Just one example of many. The SEC revealed more lies, fabricated term sheets, fake bank statements, inflated subscriber numbers, and through it all, Carlos kept smiling, kept calling himself innocent. He said he believed in Ozy, that it was just a startup struggling to grow. But investigators disagreed. They called Ozy a house of cards, built to trick smart people. Not just a failing business, but a criminal scheme to steal money through charm, lies, and media buzz. So now the question is, was Carlos a visionary who lost control, or was he always playing a role?
The jury found that Watson was a con man who lied to investors to get them to buy stock in Ozy Media and to shower him with money to grow the company.
And we should note the DOJ says this has a mandatory 2-year minimum prison sentence, that is, up to 37 years.
Carlos has pleaded not guilty. He says this was a misunderstanding. He says he believed in Ozzy and that he was just trying to build something great. But the evidence says otherwise. Emails, recordings, fake numbers, phantom partners. So here's the question. Was Carlos Watson a visionary who got in too deep? Or was he a skilled con man who played the media and Silicon Valley? Why did no one catch this sooner? Was it because he looked the part? Because he sounded smart? Because people wanted him to win? And if he had gotten that last $40 million from Goldman, would the lie have kept going? This wasn't just a media scandal. It was a modern-day con, and it begs the question, how many other startups are just good marketing?